Here we are in the middle of the octave that is the week of prayer for Christian unity. This is a time when Christians across the world focus on Christ's prayer, which we hear in John, that they may all be one. But unity is not something we arrive at easily. It requires prayer, perseverance, and sometimes the courage to face painful realities. Today's readings and the situations many of us are living through remind us that unity, whether in our families, our church, or our country, this unity is both a gift and a task that demands something of us. The first reading from Hebrews gives us a powerful image of hope. We read, "We have this hope as an anchor of the soul, sure and firm." This anchor is God's faithfulness, which holds us steady when the waters of life are turbulent. But this hope is not a denial of the pain of loss or the difficulty of rocky relationships. True Christian hope is tough and it's not always glamorous. Perhaps that's why at times hope can feel distant or unrealistic, especially when we're dealing with so many different things all at the same time. For some of us, those turbulent waters include grief as we remember loved ones who have passed. For others, it might be family struggles. Or for others, the uncertainty brought by the national or political divisions. In face of these realities, it can be hard to imagine unity. And yet unity begins here with the unshakable promise of God's love. His faithfulness assures us that we are not abandoned, no matter how broken or divided our circumstances may seem. This hope, however, is not passive. The author of Hebrews calls us to perseverance in love and good works. Unity is not something we arrive at easily. It's not something that magically happens in an instant. It requires prayer, perseverance, and sometimes the courage to face painful realities. But as we cling to God's promises in the trials of life, it's in these trials of life that we find the strength to take the next step toward reconciliation and healing. Not a leap, not a jump. It may not even be a huge step. Holding on to God's promises, we find the strength to just take the next step, however small, toward reconciliation and healing. In today's gospel, Jesus reframes the Pharisees' rigid interpretation of the Sabbath, declaring, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath." Jesus shows us that God's law is meant to be life-giving and rooted in mercy, not a heavy burden that causes division. His actions prioritize human need and compassion, challenging the Pharisees to see beyond their legalism. This powerful teaching is not easy to live out, of course. Too often, divisions arise because we cling too tightly to our own perspectives, forgetting the greater purpose of love and mercy. We find ourselves retreating to the camps in which we feel comfortable. We feel heard. We feel seen. And feeling safe is good, right? But remaining only in our comfort zones doesn't help us to strengthen the community or build God's kingdom. Jesus' words remind us that unity requires us to look beyond our differences, whether it's political, cultural, ecclesial, or even within our own families, and to prioritize the good of others. Unity is not something that we arrive at easily. It requires prayer, perseverance, and sometimes the courage to face painful realities. Jesus' example challenges us to choose love and mercy over judgment, even when it's difficult. And prayer is the foundation of unity, but it must move us toward action. Unity requires us to step out of our comfort zones. It asks us to forgive, to be patient, and to persevere even when it's hard. In the most practical ways, perhaps this is what our Paulist mission priorities look like in everyday life. Through prayer and these small actions, we become instruments of God's healing and reconciliation in the world. As the gospel shows us, Christ is the center who draws people together, and in him we find the strength to overcome what divides us. Unity is not something we arrive at easily. It requires prayer, perseverance, and sometimes the courage to face painful realities. Christ gives us the hope and strength we need to take those small yet significant steps. His faithfulness is our anchor, holding us steady in the storms of life. And through him, we are called to live as witnesses of unity, both in our prayers and in our actions.